Welcome to the future of payroll and workforce management insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management here at HR.com. I am the host of this podcast. My name is Brent Skinner, and we have a really interesting topic today around earned wage access, and I have with me Jason Lee, who is Chief of Chime Enterprise. Welcome, Jason.
Brent, it's terrific to be here. I'm a huge fan of you and HR.com, so always great to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. And the feeling's mutual. I'm a very big fan of Chime. And I've been following you guys. It's really, really interesting, exciting what you're doing. So we have an interesting topic today. It's around earned wage access, around some research that you have researched with a couple of different organizations that are well known in the space. We're going to get into all of that. But as I like to ask all my guests at the outset of these episodes is, I find there's a lot of passion in this space, in the payroll, pay disbursement, also human capital management space. What gets you motivated every day, Jason, when it comes to this work? What makes you tick? What got you into this line of work?
Well, look, I definitely share that passion probably with you and some of your prior guests. From my perspective, it's just exciting to be at really the intersection of the two largest forces in nature, and that's really labor and capital. And I think that we in earned wage access and financial health, human capital management, all of those topics, we kind of sit at the intersection of those two things. And that intersection is really where so much of business change, societal activity is occurring. I like being part of the action. I like being part of the things that matter and the things that are relevant. And so that's sort of what gets me going every morning. I will also admit, it's probably my 8, 6, and 3-year-old as well, who are banging down my door and jumping into my bed. That also gets me up in the morning. So I could not answer that question credibly without really talking about what physically is getting me out of bed.
That's right. So I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, and I have actually gotten to the point where I like to side skirt that, and I get up really, really, really early so that I actually wake them up, but it's pretty crazy. So I don't recommend it.
Well, for those who are listening, Brent and I are recording this at 2:07 p.m. Eastern time, AKA known as our vacation time, when the kids are at school. So we'll keep on enjoying our holiday together.
That's right. Absolutely. You know what? You brought up something interesting before we kind of get into the topic here, and we definitely will, around labor and capital, sort of at the intersection of that, right? And what's really exciting to me is watching a lot of this pay disbursement technology out there that's really kind of, I think it's transforming the payroll function almost, right? It used to be that the payroll department would have to basically serve two masters, or they had two demands, right? They had the demand of the employer, and then also the demand of the people that working for the employer that wanted to be paid. And let's face it, the money was in the hands of the employer right up to the point of disbursement. That was the only time when it actually switched hands. And so we had sort of an interesting dynamic where payroll departments, they really wanted to serve both masters, but from an economic standpoint, it was really more that they were serving the employer from an economic standpoint. So I find it so fascinating and interesting and exciting and encouraging to see all of this pay disbursement technology out there that's kind of changing that calculus.
Yeah, look, I think that, and folks probably know who are listening to this, I personally, we at Chime, really everything that I've done, it really is, one of the things that we think a lot about is how do we elevate the position of payroll itself. And, one of the things that I think, and I know your audience, Brent, spans across payroll and HR, But one of the things that I've noticed is that you kind of have this world of static weekly, biweekly pay, and let me be the first to say, even doing that with a standard of excellence is very, very hard to do. And it's a highly strategic role within the company. I've always believed that. We ourselves at Chime have sponsored an initiative called 30 by 30, which is the elevation of 30 payroll professionals by 2030 into the role of chief payroll officer. We believe deeply that even the static once a week, once every 2 week payroll process is incredibly challenging and it's got to be done right. But on this side over here, we've got a bunch of HR folks and total rewards leaders who also want to make investments in their employees. Hey, we want them to save more. We want them to be financially healthy. The thing that I've observed is that there's this middle area that has heretofore really been absent, which is, well, gosh, when someone gets paid and there's an HR person who's rolled out a benefit for savings or for financial health or doing all these great things, the problem is that when an employee gets paid, well, she might have obligations to make. It might be too much pressure in that moment to eventually even get to that well-intentioned benefit. And so a lot of what we do here at Chime is really try to bring those two worlds together, which is, hey, how do we increase the efficacy of a financial health program, of a savings program, of an education program? How do we bring it closer to the moment of pay? Because we know that that's the decision point that someone has to make, meaning once they get paid, they're faced with a very difficult decision. Do I do the financially healthy thing and maybe put
Mhm.
away some for savings? Or, hey, you know what, this week only, I want to go splurge, or I want to go to a restaurant, or whatever it might be. And that moment is happening once every 2 weeks. Well, we want to make that moment, uh, a more dynamic, happening every
Mhm.
day, and bringing those two worlds together to ultimately drive success for whatever financial health program there might be.
Yeah, and that is I really love the way you put that. And what's interesting about it from a sort of a theoretical standpoint, having been an industry analyst in this space for a while, that to me sounds like better engagement with pay for employees because
That's right.
you hear about that term, oh, we're gonna sort of, elevate employee engagement with their paying. It sounds good, and you kind of wondering what exactly does that mean? And this honestly, this is one of the first times I've really heard something that really makes sense to me in terms of better engagement with pay. We have the large language models that talk about, that help people understand their pay slips better, and that's important too. But I just wanted to I just want to just point that out that this is a real example of that.
Yeah, oftentimes, and look, I love earned wage access. I created the whole category 10 years ago out of my basement. But here's the thing. I think over the last 10 years or so, we've thought about that business like a financial health benefit. And after 10 years of being in this market, I venture to say it's actually not a financial health benefit. What it is a prerequisite to getting to a financial health benefit. It's a little bit like if you wanted to train for the marathon, the number of times that you put on your sneakers, it's relevant. I mean, you need sneakers to run. That's a critical part of running a marathon is, unless you don't do that thing, but most of us, we need sneakers to go run.
Ancient Greece, maybe, but
So it is a requirement, but and that person died, by the way. But there,
yeah.
it is,
Right.
it is a requirement
It's very good, yeah.
to run a marathon, but it is not correlated. The number of times that you put on your sneakers has no correlation with the result of you running that marathon. And so, in the same way, the number of times one's using earned wage access, or the number of times or percentage of an employee base who is using that, that really has very little to do with the financial health of that corresponding population. It is a prerequisite. You need sneakers to go run the marathon. But really, what should be happening is we ought to be looking at people's savings rates, people's credit score, more empirical evidence as to whether or not there's been financial health. Earned wage access is a path to that result, but it is not the result itself.
Such a great point. And this is a really good segue to get to this research that you've been working on.
Yeah,
So I know that you came out with some research in conjunction with Everest Group a little while ago, very recently. And then even more recently, I think it might have been last week, you came out with additional research having to do with earned wage access,
right.
with co-produced with PayrollOrg. Um, it was surveying nearly 800 payroll professionals. And I understand that it's, there's some surprising findings. Maybe you could share with us some of
Sure.
what you found around adoption and that sort of stuff.
Well, the Everest Group report that we released first, just to give you 10 seconds of background, Brent, on that, basically, the very honest story is about fall of last year. So we're recording this in March of 2026, so probably October-ish of 2025. I frankly just woke up. Probably my kids woke me up, but I
Yes.
was awake. I was awoken that day, and I kind of asked myself and scratched my head and said, yeah, okay, so we've all been at this thing now for many, many years, and earned wage access is becoming a huge benefit. I sit on the board of all the global companies. I mean, it's a big thing. But I sort of scratched my own head and said, is it really helping? And is it really advancing people financially? And it sort of nagged at me. And so I called up the Everest Group, who, if folks don't know, they're really the premier research firm around this topic. They've published many, many times. And I've asked them, hey, can you guys go do a study on, do employers believe that this has enhanced financial health? And to the best of my knowledge, they ran the most comprehensive study that's ever been done in the history of this topic. Hundreds of HR and payroll people on specifically this issue. And what they found was point number one, which is kind of what we all thought: 77% of companies who offer earned wage access did so as a financial wellness offering.
Mhm.
However, 83% actually report difficulty in identifying the benefit of their financial wellness program. Said differently, I went into that shop because I like, they told me it was great pepperoni pizza, but the vast majority of people walking out said, "Nah, I'm not sure if that was good pepperoni. I can't tell if that was the pizza that was so advertised." And that got me thinking a lot about really two matters. Number one, why was it that a standalone benefit is not creating the confidence that employers and practitioners need around improving financial health? And then number two, it's really immeasurable, meaning unless you're actually empirically looking at things like credit score or savings rates, again, across a portfolio of people, um, it's very difficult to assess whether or not this thing is actually working. That was
Mhm.
that was a key finding from the Everest Group, which was good intent but questionable result. You put a finer point on that by looking at the Payroll.org survey that went out to 800 plus payroll people only. So not HR, but payroll folks.
Mm.
So on the similar side, what folks said was that, gosh, 89% of payroll people, they want their employees to become savers. So that intent is there with payroll folks as well. But here's where the payroll people really shed some light. When we started the earned wage access industry, it was so early that we had to charge a fee. In other words, employees have to pay to access their own pay. This is what the payroll people said. 85 percent said, we don't think there should be any fee associated with this. Now, why are those two things relevant to each other? The same people who said there should be no fee understand that in order for someone to become a saver, you can't pay for your own pay. Does that make sense? Meaning that's how those two things interact. On average, people pay about $300 to $400 to different vendors to get them to access their pay. And by the way, that's okay, given that the expense of not having your pay is so much more significant. But really, what payroll folks are saying now is, look, we want people to become savers. That's what we really want. Step one, eliminate the fees on earned wage access and for both employers and employees. And look, I can only speak for ourselves here at Chime. That's why our product works that way. We don't have a fee for employees and employers. The new modern technology enables us not to have to charge that fee.
Mhm.
And so that really was a very significant finding. Payroll people want the best for their employees. They want them to save, and they've identified a key expense that they believe in their purview, right? Like payroll doesn't have an opinion on, are you eating too much Burger King or did you buy too much clothes? But in the world of payroll, they understand, hey, there's an unnecessary expense here and it's paying for your own pay. Let's eliminate that and let's get you to start saving.
We know what's interesting is what strikes me, what you say, it is being seen as a financial wellness benefit, but really without that sort of gentle guidance and structure for most employees, it becomes sort of a financial emergency benefit, right? Earned wage access. And that's
Yeah,
not it's good for them to be able to have that too, but for employees to be able to really plan, I think is much more important. And
that's right.
I wanted to ask you a question around we're jumping around a little bit, but there's there's a regulatory landscape around earned wage access which has changed recently. And help me understand. I think some of the fees that were associated with it had some, at least were partially attributable to some of the regulatory rules around earned wage access, it being seen as sort of a loan, technically, even though it's somebody's own wages. Can you kind of walk me through that and what's happened recently that's been advantageous for earned wage access?
Here's maybe the easiest way to think about it. Let me put fees at the top of the pyramid. So the threshold question is an employee paying or not paying for their pay? And there are three branches that emanate from that question. The first is IRS. For those people who are on this call who are payroll people, they know exactly what I'm talking about, which is constructive receipt of wages. In the 2025 IRS Green Book, so that's just last year, the IRS said, hey, earned wage access by name said earned wage access is one of two things. It's either a loan or it's your wages. There's no third state. It's either a loan or it's wages. And if it's a loan, it's not deductible. I'm sorry, it's not taxable, right? Because loans are not taxable. If it's a wage, then it is taxable. And by the way, if it's a wage, guess what? You can't charge a fee because you can't you can't discount someone's wage. So
Right.
the IRS was super clear. They said it's one of two things. Either it's a non-taxable loan or it is a wage. But guess what? If it's a wage, you really shouldn't have a fee against that because that's something called a wage discount. IRS. Now let me talk about something called a wage assignment. A wage assignment, again, for payroll people, is something where you've assigned the right to receive your wages to a third party. And that really typically arises in the context of certain repayment models where all of a sudden, hey, I took out some money and I'm going to pay it back by giving someone else my payroll.
Mhm.
And that becomes what's called a wage assignment. The third category of regulatory clarity, the third category of clarity is not regulatory at all. It's just kind of like how employers think about the world. And what I have found is, okay, number one is important. Number two is also important. But for HR professionals in particular, they kind of just give me the feedback of this kind of feels weird for employees to pay for their pay.
Yeah.
And isn't there a way not to do it that way? And candidly, that's why at Chime we built the product that we did, because employers, in particular HR departments, and by the way, I would say the more senior you get within an HR department or within an organization, folks just kind of scratch their heads and say, is this the only way to do it? Like, do you have to charge our employees who are like, they're struggling already to charge them like $300 a year just to work for me and to get paid on their own schedule? And so that's sort of like the third category, which is it's not regulatory. I would
Yeah.
say it's more reputational, and more just
Cultural.
company culture. Exactly. And
Yeah,
by the way,
exactly.
if the 10 years ago, we didn't have the technology, which allowed it to be at no cost. But 10 years later, as you know, 10 days later, technology seems to be evolving so quickly. But on this one, it really has evolved. So there's really no need to have to charge a fee.
It's interesting that all of these factors are converging to make pay itself better resemble sort of a consumer experience.
Yes.
And that is something that the younger generations, um, Generation Z, and quickly entering the workforce, Generation Alpha, um, they're just that's anything else is just makes no sense, is unfathomable to them. I'm Gen X, and I got to the point where I didn't even really question the fact that I got paid every 2 weeks. It's just like, oh yeah, that's just the way it is, no big deal. But it's just interesting to see how cultural norms have shifted as well. In the time that we have left here, I want to make sure we get to this. Um, your research shows that 83% of employers struggle to achieve measurable outcomes from EWA, Earned Wage Access, EWA. What are they getting wrong? What does a program that actually moves the needle look like? What's
I,
going on
I
there?
I think what's wrong is, and look, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think sophisticated employers really want any more point solutions. Meaning, if you're only providing this one, let's put it this way: if the data report you're getting from a vendor says, guess what? 42% of your people used the program and they used it twice a week. That is literally like receiving a report that said, I put my sneakers on 5 times this week,
Yeah,
period. Like, okay, it's not untrue.
yeah,
That's not an untrue statement, but
yeah,
how helpful is it? And so I think where we're really seeing the world work is it has to be more holistic, meaning, okay, great. Someone put on their sneakers 5 times, but they also ate better. They lifted a few weights and now they're running the marathon. And in financial health speak, what that means is someone used earned wage access. By the way, someone stopped using it, even better. Now they're saving more. Their savings rate went from 80 cents to $80. My employees, my whole workforce credit score improved by 23 points. Now an HR department can go tell their CFO, their CEO, these are measurable empirical results that didn't cost us a thing, but look how good I'm doing my job. And by the way, if you're wondering why the workforce seems to be showing up on time more, seems to be engaged more, it ain't because they get access to their pay. No, no, that's not. Just think about it logically. Why would that cause someone to be at work more often? They want to come back to work because for the first time in their life, they have savings.
yeah.
For the first time in their life, they're just a stone's throw away from being able to get an auto loan. That's real life change.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
appreciable life, tangible change. Not because I hit an app button and I got my pay 5 times a week. That's completely irrelevant. I've run the marathon twice. I just want to make sure that's clear. I've run it twice. And Um, but I don't talk about how many times my medal does not say New York
Yeah,
City sneaker wearer. Of course not.
yeah.
It says I completed the marathon. And that's really what we're after. We are looking to help people win that marathon of financial health.
That is a really great way of putting it, and it's just so fascinating to think about, um, what that means because there's a lot of research out there. It's not in front of me. I don't know the actual numbers, but stress has an incredibly deleterious effect on someone's productivity. It can be work related stress or finances related stress. It really affects people. And so from a financial standpoint, if you can alleviate that, mitigate that for folks in a structured way, sort of a repeatable way, that's going to have a big impact on the workforce. So that's just another way of saying I completely agree with you, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, I appreciate you asking about that, Brent.
Yeah. Yeah. In the minute that we have left, maybe you can share with us any of your thoughts and, what is the future going to look like for the, pay engagement or, earned wage access or maybe the larger, broader sort of topic?
It will look more like pay, meaning think of it this way, like pay today is once every 2 weeks, but it's free. It works. It's simple. And I think what we are kind of headed towards is the world of on-demand pay will kind of just look more like pay. It'll be no cost. It'll be
Yeah.
free, easy access, and really, it's just a little bit like when we talk about financial health more broadly, we talk about things like savings and credit, and that's we don't talk about the biweekly pay schedule. And in the
Yeah.
same way, there's no place for earned wage access or whatever in the context of financial health. That's a very it's going to be an antiquated concept. What
Mhm.
we will really care about is, hey, have we as an employer done all that we can do to invest in the long-term success of our employees financially? And what are the results of that? And so I think overly focusing on this one tool, sure, I think for the first 10 years, that's probably appropriate because it was somewhat novel. But I think we are quickly leaving that. And by the way, the early adopters, employers who did that, they too have woken up and realized, wait a minute, have we really done anything here? And frankly, that's all the dialogue that we're having, is switching
Mm.
people out of those programs and putting them into more holistic, oriented, free, no cost to the employee type things.
That's really, really encouraging. It's really a pay transformation underway.
Yes.
Jason, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. This has been a great conversation.
Well, Brent, it's my pleasure. I did bump Joe Rogan at that interview that he had for me, but I'll try to get back on his calendar.
You better do that. Thank you, Jason.
Take care, Brent.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at hr.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.